Is this process going to help me stay more organized? Let's find out. But before we do, watch this. So at the beginning of my video production journey, making videos for YouTube, I thought I have to attempt to at least be a little bit organized. And my way of doing that, and I wasn't going to do a spreadsheet because I really wanted something more analog. I wanted something really to engage with. And I decided to use a little notebook. And I thought I would just put one video on each page, and then I would write all of the pertinent information, the length of the video, the music that I used, the date that it was published, the file name, and all sorts of other stuff. And I wanted to reference different things about the video, especially the imagery that would help me remember what that video was about outside of the title. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I need to be really engaged with how I'm going to do this organization thing. So I decided to carve an episode stamp that I would stamp at the top of each page and then fill in the episode name. And then when I was done, I was going to stamp a completed stamp because I wanted to congratulate myself for completing the video. And it worked pretty well. I will tell you, I don't know what I was thinking. It is the smallest little area to write the name of the episode. So I thought, when I finish this book, I'll make a new episode stamp. And then of course I had to do a new completed stamp. This little completed stamp is really cute. I like how it sort of represents sticking a stake in the ground with a sign that says completed, completed. So this one got full. Yes, I have made enough videos to fill this little logbook. There's some other little notes in here, but the majority of the pages are logs of my videos that I have produced. So I went to my bigger size notebook. Bigger was better, easier to use, easier to handle. And I'll tell you what, I needed to revamp the episode stamp. And I think it turned out pretty cute. Of course, I had to do a new completed stamp, and I like this one a lot as well. So listen, I have to tell you, carving word stamps is not easy, and that's why I give myself the permission to be jagged and edgy and crunchy with the letters. The smaller the letters, the harder it's going to be. I'll show you what I did. So after I sketched out my design for this stamp, I went back over the words with a mechanical pencil of 0.5 millimeter just to kind of sharpen up the edges because I had sketched it out with a number 2 pencil. So I really just wanted to kind of make it nice and sharp so that when I'm carving it, I can see where I'm going better. So I've got the optimum all available space here, and being able to see through the tracing paper on top of the pink rubber material is really beneficial. So I'll just tape it into place, and then I'm just going to use the back of my fingernail to burnish it. And you can see I'm right there at the top with that D. So it's a little bit casual, and that's okay. That's my style. I got a little carried away there, but that's okay because I like my uneven edges anyway. So, but if you're going to be really precise, you got to take your time. All right, I'm going to use a number 1 V-shaped blade, and I'm going to use my little riser box, my little beat up riser box, and I love it because it works so well, and my sentimental little piece of cardstock that works really well as my little turntable on top here, I guess. It just allows me to move the rubber material as I carve, because on stamps this small, you move the rubber material as you're carving. You don't move the stamp. It's much easier that way. So I'm going to start with the letters because they're the hardest, and I want to get them squared away, so to speak. Now I'm carving on the outside of the letter. I'm trying not to go into the letter too much because it's going to leave me more room to correct mistakes. If I keep going into the inside of the positive space, I'm going to not have very many opportunities to make this the way I want it to be. I'm going to take away too much rubber material and I won't be able to make it like I want. Also, you can see how, as I've started moving my fingers across the transferred pencil, it's starting to smear. So if that's going to bother you, or if it's going to mess up your process, your reference, then be careful. This is a little cosmetic brush that I repurposed, so it works really well with removing some of the random scraps. You can see I came in a little tight on the upper part of that S, so I have to think about it on the back side so I don't take away too much of the material. So I'm going to go nice and slow. And you can already see how the letters easily become somewhat wonky. I'm not somebody who carves perfect letters, and I don't want to be, because that's not me, and I like the personality that the letters take on. Now again, you can see that I got a little close to the top of that O, but that's okay because I wanted these letters somewhat weighted, a little bit heavier on the bottom. And I'm just going to keep going. Now when I come in between two letters, I really have to focus. If I go too fast, I could end up going into the other letter. Now when I do these curves that are really tight, I don't push the rubber material too much. I just make little small movements with my blade, or with the material, so that I can control the very small details. And it's not always going to be perfect. I don't intend for it to be. That's not my goal here. Okay, so now I'm just going to do the outline, and I'm going to make jagged edges or uneven edges that are multiple layers, just for interest. So I'll go down the middle of it first. And I'm not trying to be perfectly even. So now I'm going to go on the inside of it just a little bit, just right up next to it, to give it that sort of cut edge feel. So now when I remove the outside, I'll leave an extra line of positive space, and I'll show you what that looks like. And I like that real uneven edge on the outside. I'm going to go along with the blade, parallel with the blade, to just sort of release that single cut there. I find if I slow down towards the end of a long pass, I'm more safe and I don't risk cutting myself because I'm taking the time to really come to a slow end on that pass with the blade. And it also helps to keep it precise. It's so easy to take away some of the lettering, just a little bit, when you're removing the exterior part of the material. So just take your time and be careful. And then when I come into tight places with my straight edge or with my X-Acto blade, I pull the tip of the blade up when I come to two places that I don't want to carve into, so that I can control it better. See, I took off the very bottom of that P, and it's going to be a tiny little bit, but it might make a difference. So for the interior, I'm going to use this number 25 lino zip blade to just remove a lot of the material at one time. But I have to be really careful because it has a really big bite, and it can take out a lot of material at once, which means it can also take stuff that you don't want it to take. And once it's removed, you can't do anything about it. I think I'll go around the outside first, just to kind of this is what happens when you go underneath the rubber material. You don't want to do that. It makes it impossible to carve. So just pay attention. Oh, I got the bottom of that P, or that D. Okay, so this is definitely going to take a lot of detail work. It's interesting how the simplest stamp requires a lot of detail work, because if I were to do an impression, well, I'll show you. I'll take a test print of this and I'll show you how really, really rough this is. I always use a kneaded eraser for removing all the crumbs. And I'm using pigment ink here. Yikes. So I've got a lot of work to do to clean this up to make it look good. So back to the cutting mat. Okay, so I have done 2 versions of it, cutting away all of the crumbs and the parts that weren't working, and now I'm at this point, so I took away some more, and I also mounted it on an acrylic mount by putting a 2-way glue on the back and letting that air dry. I've talked about it in several videos, and I'm going to try this one more time. I think I'm pretty much there. It is very rough, but I like that. It's very primitive looking. And also mounting it on the acrylic mount helps stabilize it more, so I won't, like down here you can see this a little bit not very clear. I think that's because I was holding the stamp. And I think my opinion is when you use a mount, you get a much more consistent impression. So we'll see. Much better, much clearer. And I'll probably clean up a little bit here, that tiny little dot here, that little dot above the S, a little bit here, and these little scratchy parts right here, and maybe down in this corner. And then I'm going to be done with it. I'm just going to let it be that real primitive, nice, hand-carved style. And it's similar to what I did with this stamp. And you can see how I worked through the process with this one here too, removing some of the rubber until it became clearer and a better stamp that gave a clearer print. So I like the idea that I can just kind of stamp it at the top. I like that. Listen, these notebooks, they were designed from hand-carved stamps that I carved, and I have them for sale in my Amazon shop, in the link below in the description. You'll find it there. Of course, I had to do a new completed stamp, and I like this one a lot as well. You can see that I went way off of the line there, and that's going to give it a lot of character. I might try to even it up after I get it all completed, but I'm going to see how it looks. It's part of the wonkiness that happens. That was a tricky piece to remove, and if you're concerned about doing those little small pieces with your blade, it might be better to use your #1 V-shaped blade instead of a X-Acto. It's definitely one of those things where you have to play with it, experiment with it. Don't expect perfection, because that's not going to happen. also do little bits at a time. Try not to get impatient when you're doing these fiddly parts and you want to take away with the blade, because if you get too ambitious, you can certainly remove way too much. And always take a moment before you start each letter to think about where you're going, what angle you're going in with your blade. On this process, you want to make sure that your blade is angled inside the letter. Oops. I got a little carried away right there, trying to talk and carve. Okay, now with my number 1 V-shaped blade, I'm just going to go on the outside, and I'm going to keep my blade in the material. And then even when I get into the corners, I don't release the pressure. I'm just kind of staying consistent with my pressure, and then just pivoting the blade back out, back and forth. I have a feeling it's going to look good, and it goes quicker, and it does give that sort of casual look. And this is where you want to clear off some of your cutaways, because they start to skew your vision. They start to block your view. Oh, that one. All right, well, that got really carried away, but I might keep that because it's kind of cute. I can always bring it in a little closer later, but I'm going to keep it because it's part of the expression. It adds a lot of wonk, just that one little bump. And I can see I've got some messy places, but I'm going to go back around this one more time and make the path a little bit bigger on the exterior so that when I go to take away all of the exterior, it won't be super messy. Okay. I'm going to remove the exterior, and then I'm going to take a test print. We'll see how that works. Okay, so I know it's still kind of rough, but I'm going to take a print anyway and see how it looks. Not expecting it to be perfect, but before I do, I'm going to put some glue on the back of it, let that air dry, and then use my acrylic mount. It's just going to be easier handling. This is what I use. Okay, so I'm going to let that air dry, and while it's drying, I'm going to show you what I use how I store these stamps. That I use the two-way stick glue on the back to adhere to my acrylic mount, and then when I'm not using the stamp, I'll show you what I do. So after it's been dry, then it is repositionable, and I store it on these plastic page protectors with a good white, thick cardstock in here with an index stamped, so I know what stamps belong where, and clearly I have a few stamps missing on this one, so it makes it really easy to stack and store and find my stamps. And this is what happens when you carve, even on really, really good material like this. If you carve a piece that's too thin, that doesn't have enough of an exterior around it, then you risk breaking it. And that's what happened with this. And that's why on this stamp, I didn't remove the inside of the rubber material because I didn't want this exterior border to risk this happening. Okay, so this is air dried and it's tacky to the touch. So it's now repositionable. So I'm going to go ahead and mount it on this acrylic mount and give it a little pass. Pick up some of the crumbs before I take a test print. And I'm using this pigment ink to test it out. It's going to be a little light, but that's okay. Some of the pencil may show through that's still left on the stamp. That can happen. And I try to press consistently, evenly, consistently across the stamp. One of my suggestions for inking up stamps, always keep the stamp facing upward to the sky and then put the ink on top. And when you think you have it inked up enough, give it a little bit more. So I like the way that looks. I actually like the P being a little wonky. I have a few places to tidy up, like this T right here, maybe this part of this E here, a little bit on this D, around the bottom of the U, and maybe a little bit here. And then I think I'm good. I'm going to just let it be sort of fun and playful and casual. And I like the message because that means I completed another video. So if you watch this next video that I have here up on the screen, you'll be able to see another word stamp that I carved that turned out really nice, really smooth. I think it had to do with the fact that it was so big. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video.